All right, we should be recording. We're just gonna wait for people to start streaming in here, and then we'll get into the meat of it. Wait about 5, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how many people are in at 5.
Yep. 5 to 10 minutes usually. So we just chilling.
We do have some exciting stuff to talk about coming in the future, and stuff we've done in the past this year.
Yeah.
Because a lot of stuff has happened this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like 2024 in terms of development is probably one of the larger years that we've had in terms of progress. Although it looks like 2025, barring any unforeseen circumstances, will likely end up being bigger than that.
Oh, let me open the chat here.
Yep. As we're waiting for anybody that hasn't been a part of this before, the chat in the stage channel is open for you all to use. As we go through certain things, in particular the new developments, there will be you can put questions in there, and then once we get around to the Q&A portion, we can start running through some of those questions and as to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just chat amongst yourselves if you feel like it while we're talking.
This is true. Thieves Guild when?
You'll never know.
You'll never know.
Thieves skills.
We can't tell you that. What
They
Thieves
wouldn't
Guild?
make themselves known.
There is no war in Bossing Say.
There is no war in boss. Yeah, that should be the go-to answer to that question. There is no war in boxing. So.
What should we expect for the new year, or what
Oh,
do
we're
you?
gonna get into that. That's a whole section of today.
The new okay.
Zane. That's I'm just saying like that's a whole half of what we're talking about today. So there will be a lot to cover on that question. So we'll get into it once we start.
Correct. Little sneak peek. Yeah. Make my own Thieves Guild then. I mean, nothing's stopping you if you had enough money, enough resources, and enough people. That yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Favorite quest you ran this year? Hmm.
The one where he killed me.
That wasn't that was the bad luck one should have been a lot more fun than it was, but it was like a headache because everybody kept failing everything. Oh man, that one was rough. Um,
Yeah, you know what? The one with I don't know about Virgil, but my favorite one to be on was the one Virgil ran where it was just me, Owerty, and um I can't help but think I'm Sarah. Valander.
are we? Yeah, that's the bad luck one.
Yeah, I said I don't know about you, but that's my favorite.
I don't know if that was my favorite one to run. Because I just, oh man, I was feeling bad the whole time because I was just like, the dice are just destroying you
Fun
guys.
fact: 50% of all the quests that I ran this year, half of them were avoided by people pretending that they were bringing prisoners to the place that they went.
Yep, you should really start thinking about how to get around that ploy.
Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't with this one. They were at a prisoner facility. Like, what was I gonna do? Like, we're here to bring prisoners to the prison. Oh, okay.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, what? Let me look
Who would
through
do
the
such a thing to you, Fent? You shut your goddamn mouth.
collection.
I fucking hate
Let me
bears.
look through the DM quest list real quick. Let me do a snapshot because I'm trying to remember what was 2024 and what wasn't 2024.
So ammo tracking is not an upcoming feature. No, not yet. That's gonna take some bandwidth.
Yeah, it possibly not ever due to that particular problem.
Yeah,
It's more of a can we make that an easy thing to track for the players and us? And if the answer is no, then we will not track ammo.
yeah. It's something that we just let's forget that feature forever. Yeah.
When was this? This was the first of the year. Okay, so that's
They
2024.
said the first of the Urukai, and I was like, what?
Yes, the first of the Urukai. Yes, that's
All right. Well, it's 6 minutes past, so I think we can. I think we have enough people in here to get started.
yeah. Let's kick it.
All right. Well,
Take
I think that as I alluded to before, what we're going to start going over is the things that we've done this year, because I think it often gets past us how much stuff has been done this year in general, just because of how passive the play is here. Same thing with the DM quest, at least in my opinion. I don't even remember one of them that happened this year, and I was in it. But the first thing that we got done, of course, the biggest thing, at least in my opinion, is the crafting system. That whole crafting system got released along with its guild, the Clockwork Brotherhood, or sorry, the um, the Clockwork,
Mage
the
Smith
Mage Smith
Union.
Union. My bad. The Mage Smith Union. Sorry, my bad. It used to be called something different in our notes. Um, Obviously the Deef Guild. Yes, the Deef Guild. Um, the crafting thing is great. Thank you. We appreciate that. We only aim to make it more integrative and or integrated and uh, more accessible. Um, Along the same lines, we're keeping with dashboard stuff. Uh, the trading system also came into effect. You can trade things between each other, track your inventories, etc., etc. Um, that's not something we got done this year, although I did think it was, which was the inventory system. Um, the other thing we got integrated was the replacement for the topper system that we had, or when I think people used to use their own profile for just posting, with the C colon command, which a lot of you have made me aware looks like a smiley face. Um, so yeah, that. Um, the other thing that we got done this year is the party system, which is a huge leap towards the in future, and I'm sure Virgil will get to the quest system. Uh, it's going to be one of the most integrated things any server has ever done, at least to my knowledge. But the party system that automatically helped with danks didn't made it so that you didn't have to put in your party levels anymore. Made it so you could join other people's parties and you can make your own. One of the best things we've ever released, and I think it's a big stepping stone to even better things. Um, I'm just gonna wait here because Eve is typing something long, but
How about just in the interest of time management, you
yeah, I
you
was about to
roll and
say, oh, no, no,
about chat like a little bit afterwards. We'll
that's
we'll have
fair.
a we'll have
That's
a
fair.
pause after you go through your stuff.
That's fair. As I said, the release of the Mage Smith Union was a big one. We also updated the encounter system with the stealth mechanics you guys now see. I don't know if any of you were, well, definitely a few of you were here before that was the case, where they were all written in the rules and you had to double check and then you had to go back and forth and make sure you were doing things right. And now it's a lot easier. You just, the bot asks you questions, you say if you passed or failed. We even included this new passives feature with the help from Deef. Although, it wasn't hard alias work, but he came up with it quick. Um, so yeah, that's the immediate thing with that system. The other thing that we have now is more downtime activities. Actually, no, I don't think more. I think we just have downtime activities this year, um, where we have harvesting, hunting, stuff like that, and a lot of people like it. It integrates really well with the crafting system I mentioned earlier. There's a particular need for Blue Leaf, for Deef to make Kyurem's ointment. That's the big one. But there's other things like Mithril and stuff so that he can make. And I say he because he's the only one that really does it. But there's people like Scar, who's something, who he makes stuff too, and you've all got a bunch of cool blueprints this year. One for the +1 weapon was particularly one of my favorites. The next thing is the item command, where you can look up any of our quote unquote homebrew items. They're less homebrew items and more stepping stones to actual items, although they are interactable in some certain way, I'm sure, with lore and stuff, depending on if you were to DM quest or interacting with some sort of DM. And speaking of the DMs, we also implemented a new staff structure this year, where the moderators are going to be there. Then you're going to have your community managers, such as myself. Moderators obviously is Whack, and then we have Virgil, who is the lore department. That's the main shit. That's the big stuff. The more minor stuff, and it's more in comparison than saying it's minor. It's really big, again, in comparison to other servers that don't really do this much automation. The player dashboard had got some quality of life improvements. You now start on your character section rather than the world section, which, ironically, now that we have like a weather section, works just as well. I think if we just didn't switch that, but it doesn't matter. It's better now because people check their characters and stuff. Another thing that we put in was the environmental stuff with the wind. The mechanics around that, whether or not you got disadvantage on, depending on the wind, stuff like that. Then your display name feature, you can use your display name instead of your character name if you just put it in the bot. We're aware that, once you press the update button, it switches it back. We're gonna, obviously see some stuff around that. Maybe a toggleable option. Who knows? Then you have the 3 new shops and homebrew dishes being sold in the taverns and restaurants. There's also cold and hot weather effects, but we haven't reached. Yeah, you guys haven't reached those yet. I mean, maybe if we get a really, really hot day, you might suffer some of those effects. Maybe a level of exhaustion here and there, but maybe this winter, perhaps. But yeah, we got some new shops. I believe that those were the component, blueprint, and scroll shops.
Cooking components specifically,
Mhm.
scrolls, and then blueprints.
Yeah, and I think that included recipes as well. So those new shops got integrated, and then we also had the homebrew dishes being sold into the taverns, such as the Bard College's stage one, and then we also have the tavern. Next, we updated the encounter zones in terms of server channels. So all of them are now forum channels. Again, I don't know how many of you were here before that switch, but they used to just be normal channels, and you could optionally make threads. But we noticed that a lot of people were using threads or wanted to use threads, and so we just decided to make it a forum channel. That way, it's like putting your own little story in, or a chapter in a book. This is the book of the Verdian Glade. This person went here and did this. This is their story.
And with that, we also separated out the slums section inside of the city, so that used to be just all of those slums channels used to be visible. If you were in the city. Now you have to run a travel command to get to them, which just kind of helps keep encounter zones separate from safe zones, generally speaking, in terms of how the whole server is structured.
Yeah, it was strange before when how those were viewable and the others weren't. I guess it made a little bit amount of sense because you were in the area, quote unquote. But now they're separated out and they're forum channels. So yeah, that's generally the newer thing on the encounter section. I think that's all we did on the encounter stuff. The next thing we did was the lore channel / wiki, where now you can look everything up that has certain tags. Everything is segmented and links to each other. And their individual posts so that you can, link to whatever chapter you want in their post or paragraph you want in their post. But yeah, that was the big one for the lore is one, we included a lot more lore than there used to be. That used to just be little blurbs and kind of hearsay legend. But now it's fully integrated. There's lore for the gods and their prayers, and what their followers are like, ceremonies that they're around them, the places they're in, how the places that they're in became to be the way that they are, and what the people are like there generally if they're not even religious, and how they link between each other. So how Terraris was the first city, et cetera, et cetera. And then the last, you know, kind of server side stuff is that we updated the guild rank rewards. We noticed that the some of them were a little imbalanced in comparison to each other, and so we upgraded a bunch of them. Um, and yeah, they're just a lot better now. I'm sure that you all, if any of you have second feature, or if any of you gain a feature from any of the guilds, you would be appreciative of that. I myself am a fan of the new Helion one. But on the player side, we had over 5,000 war assets gained this year. A lot of war assets. Not only did you gain a lot of war assets, but you got 2 points on the and when I say over, I mean over. It's a lot. But you gained 2 points, one in Solaris and one in Lunaris, and we had two separate events for that. I believe, right, Virgil? Or did we not have one?
Yes, we did. We did
Okay,
have
we did.
to each of those events. Maybe not explicitly, but definitely tangentially.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't cause it or anything, but the events were definitely your efforts were definitely shown in the world as an effect. Um, Other than that, there's a couple DM quests that happened this year. You all saved the Serenus tribe from a fiend-led fire giant group and rescued many refugees in the process. I believe that was ran by a group of us, multiple people on multiple quests. But yeah, that whole thing had you going into volcanoes, fighting the leader of the tribe, etc., etc. The next, I believe, was one that myself and Kravik were in, and it was you subdued an archfey whose mind was twisted by corruption. Um, but yeah, and it was basically just really, really ruining druids' lives by corrupting a bunch of plants and wildlife, and generally bolstering the forces of evil to attack Terraris, corrupting it from the inside. That was a big one. And then the last one is the recent one with the Lich. You discovered a plan to steal a bunch of resources from the city, realizing that that led you to a Lich's mansion, and you stopped him from doing whatever he was trying to do. Um, but in the end, multiple people had multiple quests around that situation. One was more direct, very, very damage heavy, and the other was more covert. That was the one that Awerty was in, and I'm sure they remember that. But other than that, I think that that's everything we've done this year. I'm not sure
You
if there's
missed
anything
one
more.
data point, and I know you did it on purpose.
Shut up. Of course I did it up. But yeah, no, that's it. Other than that, I believe there's nothing more that happened this year unless you can think of anything, Virgil. Not that.
Yeah, nothing major. Like obviously, there's a couple of like smaller updates and quality of life stuff that happened throughout the year, and some rule changes and clarifications. But that those are so numerous and frequent that like they're not really completely worth mentioning.
Remove
But yeah,
reborn. That's the one thing I brought. Well,
not
remove the
from you.
ability to reborn your character, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, Yeah, so I'm just taking a look at the chat real quick before we jump into what is happening or what we plan on doing in 2025. I can't say with complete certainty that all of this stuff will happen, but this is kind of the priority list that we have for 2025, and we can get into some detail on those. Um, so, if there are no lingering questions right now from recapping 2024 that require immediate attention, which looking at the chat, it doesn't seem that way, then let's just pop in and talk about what everybody really wants to hear, which is stuff that's happening this year moving forward. So, The biggest thing that I know we've been talking about for some time now, but we have the majority. In fact, I would say all of the building block pieces in terms of other features that we need to now create this. It's just building it, which by we I mean mostly Kravik and Whack, or almost completely Kravik and Whack, really, is the new quest system. This is one that we've talked about a couple of times in other Q and A's, but essentially the angle that we're going for is for the quests, the guild quests themselves, the dailies, and all of that to be um, almost fully automated and function more like a choose your own adventure sort of book format, where you just go up to the Adventurers Guild, for instance. You select a quest, you take it. There'll be buttons for you to press. So you accept the quest. You'll have a quest log type deal that you can reference, so that way you know where you're going and know what stage of the quest you're on, or can recall it at the very least. And then once you get to the area that you need to go to do the next quest stage, the quest, like, you'll have a system and mechanics available to you to prompt it to give you the next stage, and then you'll either make a check or make a choice. Like, you'll actually have like multiple choices that you can make, depending on the quest and the stage. And then each quest will then have multiple branching paths and ways that it can weave and wind, instead of just the standard three-stage process that we're kind of stuck with right now because of character limitations. And also, even if we didn't have character limitations, having an embed that's 3 billion characters long is going to be impossible for anybody to follow. So being able to break it up and just give you the pieces as you need them and give you choices, and then also add in that variability, so that way one quest is not the same every single time, will be a huge game changer overall. That's one of the last major pillars in terms of system mechanics that we really need to get up and running, before we consider this place out of beta. So with that will come a a reduction of sorts in terms of the number of available quests per guild, just because the quests themselves will be so variable and kind of randomized, because the encounters within them will then be a bit more randomized. Like, other, depending on how you pass or fail or choices that you make, one quest can be done upwards of like 10 to 20 times before you play it out exactly the same way twice, is the goal that we're going with here. So we'll have a reduction in the quests there because they're meatier, but then we'll couple that with what we've been talking about, is a jobs system. So right now we have quests on the list that are more like just, like stuff like daily chores, stuff like problems at port, that are just kind of like simple deeds that are more like little odd jobs that you're doing rather than like actual quests. So in the interest of not losing some of that, lower end, like, easy, I can pop in, I only have an hour, let me get some gold and do some skill checks with my character. We don't want to lose that. We're just going to have it in its own section where now you can just do jobs that aren't tied to the guilds necessarily. But the guild quests will get an update and be a bit more fleshed out, and that will also allow us to then build in weeklies, which will be bigger versions of that, and then dungeons, which will be an even larger version of that mechanic and system. So that's the big one that we want to tackle this year, top of the list. And then with that comes in mines, or not with that, but kind of associated to that, because dungeons and mines kind of fit in a similar sort of category. But essentially, we have mining as a downtime activity, but we don't currently have a system set up for reclaiming some of the lost mines throughout the continent. And there are some. So one of the things that we're going to build in as a system as well this year is that mining, that reclaiming the lost mines setup. So mines will be similar to kind of like how hordes. Some of you have interfaced with hordes. Similar to how hordes are kind of like the next level up from doing a dank, and you get greater rewards or greater reward chances because you're doing something tougher. Mines are that kind of escalation for the normal mining mechanic downtime activity. So that one will be, if you're a deef, or working for deef to get components that are that are or gem related, you'll want to start regularly going to these mines, once that feature is open. We do have some guilds left to implement. Some of them, like a lot of the guilds, are in fact, even one that's currently out is still waiting on a mechanic that it does or that it can interface with. But some of the guilds that haven't been released yet are on hold because we're waiting for system support for some of the things that we think need to be in place for that guild to really work. So we're gonna the goal is to finish up those. I'm gonna be nondescript about what those guilds are because I like them to be surprises. Um, so sorry, not sorry. Um, we After that we are looking at expanding, and I'm gonna be somewhat vague on this, just because we're fine tuning the actual like details of it. But we are looking to expand the wild channels section of the server entirely. So really trying to like make it so that the distances that you all are traveling on the map are somewhat reflected in um, how much you're actually doing in terms of encounters or interacting with new areas, and also expanding them so that way there is a system or a means of you to explore and actually be rewarded for exploration. We want to add a little bit more exploration mechanics into the wild channels themselves. So we're working on that. We've already started to work out some ideas, but obviously then we have to execute and implement on the coding side to make that happen smoothly. But expect to hear more about that as the year goes by. With that will come an expanded camping system. Right now, camping is just a thing that's kind of done in the rules, similar to how Danks were before. With this expanded wild channel feature, we will obviously need to make the camping system a bit more robust because that's something you're going to have to do a bit more often if the wilds are going to be bigger. The next thing on the list is expanding the training system. Right now, we only have a training system for sidekicks. Um, that will be changing. So, as we've mentioned, I think a couple of times, possibly in Gen Chat this year, we're going to transition the bulk of the leveling for sidekicks to be more similar to how you level up your PCs. So, if your sidekicks with you and going on, quests and encounters and interacting with you, the sidekick will start to level up similarly to how you do. So it'll be more about you interacting with the sidekicks, which that means that training will take on a new purpose and meaning. So some training will be potentially like things that we floated around in terms of the training subject is, using training as a means of boosting XP gain temporarily, to training on skills and learning languages and stuff like that. So, um, all of that's on the table in terms of the quote unquote training system expansion. We're working out some of the kinks and details and math on how we want all that to work, but that is definitely on our list for this year to tackle. As a kind of update or a progression point for the name change feature that was mentioned in 2024, disguises. We want to be able to create a system wherein people that would like to be sneaky and or surreptitious about their identities can do so in a more meaningful way with the server. So being able to, along with that, Tupper feature that we added in and the name change feature, kind of combining those into a system that allows you to actively change the display name and even image of the character that you're currently using if they are in a disguise. And then developing means of figuring out, like just having, text and whatnot about, okay, how can you discover the disguise? It depends on that. So we're working out some details on like all of the mechanics side of that just to make sure that that happens smoothly, on top of the coding requirements that that has. Um, then the other thing that is on the major list that I think would be major to the players is something that only like two people at this point that are not Vanguard would ever remember was a thing in the old version of this server, which is the magic find system. There is one extra, I mean, there's a few more merchants that we have planned for this place, but there's one merchant that we had to sideline since we restarted this place a few years back, which is the item find merchant. So there is plans on setting up an item find merchant who their only purpose is, yeah, it's kind of a gambling system of like, hey, I don't see this item show anywhere in the shops. I don't have a crafting, blueprint for it or whatever components. This merchant shows up every so often in the city. When they're there, I can go, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount of money to try and find this thing. And then based off of how much you pay and what the rarity of the item is, that merchant will then have, will do a few rolls on their end and then see if they can scrounge that item for you, find it somewhere, and then bring it back in a certain time frame. So that's also in the cards to bring back from the old days. In terms of minor developments, we have trading and shopping system adjustments. So one of the big things there is we're going to be trade changing the parameters and restrictions around trading to make it more user friendly for what trading, what players want to trade between characters with. You're trying to avoid cheating before in exploitations, and I think we've arrived at a better way of controlling for exploitations in trading while not making trading so restrictive that it's not really as useful or fun to engage with. Um, the other thing that we are doing to or planning to do to both is developing a shopping cart interface to where you can actually select multiple items at once, whether you're shopping or trading, and then do a full blown exchange instead of doing it item by item, one at a time. So that's another thing we're looking into and working on. And by we, I mean Kravik and Whack working out the kinks of that in the code in the background. Things that will be implemented relatively soon, haggling and busking. Those have been on the list for some time, and they just keep getting knocked down the list because other more important things show up. But they should be coming through pretty soon. So when you're shopping, you will actually be able to haggle with the NPC shopkeeps, and then busking will become kind of probably an attachment or a part of the downtime activity system to where the bardier ones among you who already like to sing songs and poems in public can actually make money for doing so in various ways. And then I already covered that. And then the other thing on the list to keep an eye out for, which isn't really like connected to much, but one thing that we are also exploring just as a community engagement piece for the server as a whole is coming up with some out of character events. Obviously, we have all these dailies and DM quests and stuff like that for in-character stuff, but there's other things that fall outside of D&D itself that the community often engages with. So expect to hear more from Fantessa and the community organizers this year about those sorts of things. Um, we have some long shot list items, or long shot items on this list, which are things that we would love to be able to get done in 2025. We don't know how possible that is, but just to kind of give you an idea of where our heads are at beyond all of these other things that I've listed, is player owned businesses. We want to create a system for that. So that way you can set up your own little shops and, just play out. Like if you want to be a shopkeep instead of an adventurer, you can do that.
Go into competition with Eve.
And then gardening, that's a whole system mechanic that we want to implement where you can at your homes get a garden and start to grow, have a system for more regularly growing some of those vegetation components, whether they be for crafting or for cooking. Um, and this actually leads into, I was about to say, or poisons, and the next thing on the list is custom kit mechanics. The other thing that we've been looking at since day one here is expanding the usability and functionality of the kits. So, like, we're talking poisoners kits, herbalism kits, um, navigators tools, that sort of stuff. Like all those kits that kind of just have very vague, if not completely useless mechanics half the time. We want to expand the mechanical utility of those and just give a new layer of interacting with the world. So like I brought it up with gardening. If you're good with poisoners kits, you can grow certain plants that are poisonous in your garden to then interface with that mechanic. So that's something that's definitely in our purview. I already mentioned dungeons. Dungeons are very much downstream from getting the quest system up and running, so and they're also big beasts to write for and make sure are mechanically executed correctly. So I'm pretty sure we're pretty confident that we will get the quest update done this year, but whether or not that will also allow us to get dungeons up and running within the same year, kind of not so sure, just because of how big those are. And then the last thing on the list is just us reviewing the as a group because we've been busy doing other stuff in the holidays, reviewing the 2024 D&D edition and coming up with what decisions we want to make about what to incorporate, what not to incorporate, if anything, in here. I think it'll be probably. I'm pretty sure that we're all at least at a stage right now in the Vanguard where at most it'll be a bit of a hybrid between the two. It will likely never turn into a full transition over, but we'll see. But yeah, that's the list. That's the list for 2025, as we're aware of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So now, unless there's any clarifications that either Kravik or WAC want to make or additions in information about any of those systems, especially the upcoming ones, um, I'll give you guys the floor if you want it for a little bit, but feel free to drop any questions that you guys have in the chat right now. We can, as they're talking, or if they don't have anything to add, we can get right into the Q&A portion of it if anybody has immediate questions. Ooh. Anything for before we start answering questions? Anything on your end, Kravik? Because I know you just unmuted.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Yeah, no, we can't
Oh,
hear
nope, we can't hear you.
you. Oh, he's gone.
So maybe he's been trying to interrupt me this whole time, and I've just been seeing. Oop, sorry.
He's gone, but he has stuff to say. I know he does.
Yeah, I always have stuff to say.
Virgil, is that you?
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, we got
Yep.
you now.
All right. What was I saying? For the quest part, we also have the type of quest that we call weeklies. So that's the bigger version of the quest that you can't do that often, but that's mainly a thing that we also want to add, which is like a piece between the current quest and something like a dungeon. So
I
it's
think you already mentioned it.
medium size.
I mean, I glossed over it. He can expound
Yeah.
upon it.
And in addition to the system, what it also does is it interacts with a lot of other components like the party system. And that's an important one because that also means that a single quest can be done more often throughout the career of an adventure. So if you're low level, you can do the same quest as you can do high level with different outcomes and different battles or checks that might be in there. And that's one of the things that makes the quests more valuable long term. Now a lot of the quests are basically for a low level or a high level, and you can't really do them in a challenging way. That's an important addition to that. That's probably all the things that I wanted to add.
Yeah, I'd just say I think dynamic difficulty is something that we're going to continue to strive for. That's kind of what Kravik was just talking about, is hoping for our content to be able to be run with who's available and when available. Because you're not always going to have the same group and things like that. So that's a big piece of Quest and the kind of tiered system and some of the options in there. And with that, we're going to change the way some of the quests work. The kind of problems at the port and some of the other more what we call like chore type quests, or people refer to as that, those are going to get sectioned out and not really be a part of the quest system anymore and being part of a new system kind of rebranded as jobs or a different type of income generator. So those things will kind of go hand in hand together. I don't think I had anything else I thought of I wanted to chip in there. So,
Well, this is if you guys are good. I mean, if anything comes up, feel free to chime in. But this is actually probably one of the most intriguing questions we've gotten on a Q&A. Are there any features that, and I guess this is down to each of us, are there any features that you thought players used a lot less than you expected or not as much as you thought? Which of the new features have been the most headaches? So
I think the only people that get to talk about the headaches are Kravik and Wax, so I'm going to answer for the only one I can.
Well, I think trading is one of the things that
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
have
trading.
difficulties in. That's one of
trading
the-
sucks, everybody. If you didn't know, I just want you to know it sucks. But no, we've got some cool ideas for it, in all seriousness.
Yeah, it's a bit of a question between balance and usability. Yeah.
Yeah, and it will get better. I think we've already mentioned this, but the like in general and stuff and the general air about the system currently, but the limitation that currently is on like gold and such will be lessened, if not completely gotten rid of it eventually. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but it will be gotten rid of. I don't know if Virgil went over that. Maybe he might have.
I went over it vaguely. I wasn't sure if we wanted to get into the particulars of it, but
We already
essentially-
kind of said gave it away in general before. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure.
So yeah, like the long and short of it is that right now it restricts like what you can trade between one exchange around gold value of the items or gold being exchanged. And that has made trading far too restrictive and cumbersome for people to interact with, and we recognize that. So we're gonna relinquish that aspect of it, like remove that, but we're gonna add in other parameters that will still allow trading to not be like completely exploited to where, you know, say you get to level 10 and you have all this gear because you've been danking like a fiend, and then your buddy joins the server and you're just like, here, have all of this free. Like, we want to make sure that people still got to play the game a little bit. So there will be some guardrails and some restrictions, but it won't be that restrictive anymore. So you still can be like, hey, I want to give you this item and I just want to give it to you. That will then be generally allowed, but there will be other restrictions surrounding that will keep it relatively, you know, amenable to us, or at least fair to us, in terms of not being too exploitative.
The AJ method, I mean, not really. More
Yeah.
like the Whittaker method, to be honest.
Whittaker did do a lot of the
Whittaker does that, and that's our main concern for that. I'm abashedly saying the reason we made that rule is because of Whittaker. Go there.
And then yeah, I mean, I feel like trading has been the biggest headache out of the bunch. In terms of things that haven't been used as much,
I don't think there was any system that actually. I've been thinking about it in the background, but like I don't think there's actually been any system that has been like drastically not used or used more than I think it would be used.
Actually, we talked about one briefly yesterday. I think the guild shops are a little underutilized, and I think that we're looking into some neat ways of making those a little more fun to interact with. We've got some ideas about shopping and interactions as a whole in regards to stock and things like that, and how the shipments are determined. We're looking at a way to have more of the mundane adventuring equipment, not necessarily guaranteed to be in stock, so to speak, but assuring a more likely availability for new characters. And things to kind of get over some of the things there. So some of the stuff, when we look at some of these things that are pain points and we talk about individuals' headaches and things, the group is trying to build a living world, right? And it's rather opinionated. So some of the stuff is like people aren't going to like it, right? Or they're going to find ways to adjust to it, or things like that. And other things oh, people are going to love, right? So there's always a little bit of a balance and figuring out the way it's going to go when any of these things go on. Something Virgil talked about when he talked about the expansion of exploration. We've been talking about exploration in that campsite method for a little over a year now. We started that one, definitely not this year,
Yeah.
middle of last year. And with those, we've been trying to find a way to make it so that actions take meaning and you spread throughout the world, right? And then you run into these other things that kind of lock you from doing that. So we've hit a couple balance things, particularly with the trading and the shopping. But the channels are, completely different from when we launched this place. Right. So there's going to be new revisions and rewrites of things like that as well. And hopefully become less of headaches. I don't know. It'll always have our shtick to it though, right? Like, because
How about shops that have random
we've got an
encounters?
intent.
Don't tempt Bobbit, dude. Don't do that. One of the
We
shops
do
already
have
has
some
that.
random encounters people haven't found yet, and that's mainly because um, we haven't unlocked another kingdom yet. We thought we might get real close this year, but we have strongholds and things like that coming as well. Um, and the player efforts have been driving towards it. We're getting really, really close, but we're going to have that bridge to tackle soon, right? So, as we open more places, we have even more things out there. Shops with dynamic encounters is kind of on the tail, or at least in a similar vein of our Magic Find concept type of thing. And so there will be a similar idea to that once we can get it plugged in.
Yeah,
And
and I will say that as for the idea that you're going down, we have discussed something similar. Um, sort of like random encounters and
Bobbits
different.
is a danger zone too.
By
Sorry.
dynamic encounters, I think they mean like actual like you get a quest while
You
you're
get like a
running
prompt.
around the streets, which is something we
Yeah.
have discussed.
Mm-hmm.
It for the future.
Oh, I meant to bring that up actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's this year. It's a very big in quest, but if you're talking about something like, oh, you're in Skyrim and you've reached a prerequisite and someone approaches you for something, we do have an idea for that. Don't know how, obviously the coders would talk more about how viable that is, but that is something that we are looking into, and once it's done, or if it's done, we do want to go full throttle into it because it is an
Yep,
interesting
and
subject.
that would fully cover, because I know Wax about to go in on it. I'll just say, to kind of put a general note on it, that like NPC Radiant AI thing that Skyrim does, that we are definitely trying. That's been on our list to try and figure out our own means of mimicking it, which you see a beginning stage of that with the town crier, a little bit of us like testing the waters with that. We want to be able to incorporate
Yeah.
that much further. So that would encompass some of what I think you're getting at here, Eve, with the random encounters with the shopkeeps, as well as the suggestion that came through like last month with the whole rumor mill idea. Like all of that would kind of be housed in that larger mechanic. So it's definitely been something that's been on our purview for some time to try and tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so dynamic NPC or that kind of activity is something that's a piece of quests, right? Something Kraving and I built and have been working on for a long time is the ability to fire off these events when certain triggers and events and things are met. And we do have the building blocks in place for that. Now it's more of outlining the behavior and the overall quest system, right, to run that behavior through. So that'll be a part of quests, whether it's an initial run out of it, not certain, right? But it's absolutely one of those pieces and is going to be included in that chunk.
Yeah, the really ambitious version of that one, which I'm not promising that we can actually achieve, is to get that system in place and then somehow be able to attach actual chat GPT type stuff to the NPCs so they can respond to you in real time. But we
Yeah, that was our original idea, but that'll be,
that would be a
that'll take
huge
some time.
Give me an account to use, and I'll do that.
Yeah, for people who
Yeah,
haven't been here
that's
long
mine.
enough, that's Kravik's whole thing. Is that, oh, you have this idea, it's done.
I mean, I've already made AI
Oh my God,
implementation,
see what I
so
mean?
I need a credit card attached to
I need your
thing.
credit card information.
That'll be post getting out of beta for sure. That'll be like an update after beta.
That's the most complicated part of that, just setting up limitations on that, because
Yeah.
obviously people can use it a lot, so we have to think about the financial side of AI as well.
I guess. Should we? Because I'm not unless
To
there
add
are
on that
any.
though, yeah, I want to expand on that because, like Wax said, we want to implement lots of triggers for a lot of things. So yeah, that will definitely come into play because I'm not sure if we talked about it or I thought about this, but we would also have something like a quest that gives a bonus to a restock time. Now the shops restock at random times, but we could in the future do quests that speed up the restock time or do something like that to interact with different parts of the system through triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, in
something that we
fact, our
also
whole goal is that everything you all do impacts the world and its rate in
Yeah.
some form or function. But
Yep. That'll be a big piece once we start liberating the other kingdoms too, because there will be a whole rebuild effort that your actions will be tied to.
Yeah, and
So-
obviously with this talk about ChatGPT and stuff, like I do wanna focus on the fact that the only reason that that is being limited to this system is for the bigger stuff to be run by us. The big stuff will always be run by us, and it will be better the less work we have to do on like the stuff that we're
Day-to-day.
trying to get automated.
Yeah.
So like DM quests, bigger quests, event quests, hell, even when you get to the Linares and the Solaris, like that's the stuff that we want to make feel really important, and that's the things that we want to focus on the most. But like, we want to make the automated stuff just as good, and it's not like we won't upkeep it. With recent events, for instance, on the Town Crier, we even do it now. Or perhaps quests could change the items in the shops for rare items for a time period. I mean, we've done things like that. Like for instance, certain events have like triggered double XP. We've done things like that before. I don't know about how hard that would be on the coding side, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely within the realm of possibility, and also things that we've discussed of like expanding, like collective efforts, expanding the a certain shop or a certain resource for an area. Now you have access to this thing or access to this feature or access to this new homebrew item that we create because you all did this. There's actually one quest that has been around since pretty much the beginning of this place that hasn't gotten completed in the Brotherhood that is tied to a homebrew item. So you guys have just been like, we need to get that quest done in the Brotherhood so that way you guys can get that homebrew item. But like there's stuff like that already, like that's more manual, but a lot of that stuff will then become like as we get these systems in place, we can automate that. So that way once you guys do it, it's just it triggers, it happens, you see it reflected in the world, like everything's just running smooth. And as Fantessa already said, and we've talked about in Gen Chat before, like setting it up for a lot of the day-to-day stuff that way to be automated at that level gives us way more space and time, to really make sure that the content that is there and automated is high quality, but also the content that we're running is high quality. Which is the other reason that we wanted to, create separate divisions for the staff roles, is just to help organize our efforts and make sure that the quality is dialed in as much as we can make it, and just giving people specializations to worry about rather than like trying to do everything that the server needs at once. So
Oh, that's a question we haven't gotten in a while. Any plans for when we release Liberate the Other Cities? Is it planned to make those lands livable like Terraris? Yes, I know it's possible by houses from their houses list.
so
Isn't there any
I'll
future
jump in on that one real quick here. So that one, yeah, the kingdoms are going to be repopulated, right? But like anything else, once we liberate them, there's actually a whole process. I kind of mentioned it before, was the stronghold things that we have set up. So, the war assets and kind of gathering this war effort is the stage that we're in right now. That doesn't necessarily auto unlock a kingdom, so I didn't mean to give off that impression if I did. But more, um, Virgil talked about exploration and things as well. So like there will be other outposts, and we even have along the lines of player businesses bastions planned for a long down the line road. That one's probably on the long stretch list. Um, that will make it so there are other habitable areas within the wilds, not only in the new kingdoms, but then there will also be efforts to rebuild. They're not like auto unlocked, but the idea is, yeah, those will be places that once they're unlocked, if we can hold the war off, we're going to hold them.
And as for your
And
second
that would go for all four.
That has happened before. The whole thing where Tararis becomes empty because high levels go at or like later places. That has happened. We're aware of that issue before this place relaunched, and we definitely don't want that to happen. So there will be reasons for why to stay in Tararis or stay in certain regions because they give unique things that other regions don't, and there'll be reasons to travel because at the end of the day, you're adventurers.
And as the other thing is with our quest system, once we get it automated, as new places get opened up, even though you may get a quest in, say, Lunaris, that doesn't mean that it won't take you into the region of Tararis to complete. Like, especially on like the weekly side, there
Even the dungeon side.
And on the dungeon side, because like the dungeon's static, it's in one spot. So like if you need to go to this particular dungeon or try and get this item or whatever, and similar to with components for foraging and mining, like they also have terrain and regions that they're kind of tied to for the most part. So there are reasons where we're already kind of trying to think forward and ahead of that with the mechanics that we do have of giving you reasons to stay sort of circulating through the continent depending on what you want to do and interact with. But that's not going to completely, like, if you want to just be a homebody in Lunaris once it's liberated and that's your town, you can do that. Like, we can't stop you from doing
You
that.
can be
But
a magic
there will be
racist
plenty of
full time.
incentive to move around.
Yeah, but
And it
kind
also-
of, some of the feedback we hear now is you can't get everything here. And that's going to be the same there. There's going to be stuff you can only get in Tararis, and you'll have to come back here to do it. Right.
And also, there's
type
the major incentive. If there's an event quest happening in Tararis that isn't world spanning, you're gonna have to go to Tararis to do it.
Yep.
And
So-
again, once the automation's all the way done, that'll be regular enough to keep people cycling through.
Yeah, tied to
And-
those resources, we'd also link that to player businesses. So
Yep.
those resources will have to be gathered, so that's motivation for players to either go themselves or send other players to different areas in the world. So a lot of reasons.
And again, on the rebuild effort, I know that this is an eventual thing, but it's not like the guilds will be present in, like, even once, say, Lunaris is completely liberated. Guilds aren't going to have headquarters in there, so like you're still gonna, at least in that transition phase, like you're gonna have to go back to Tararis, get some quests there until like you can set up another headquarters in Lunaris for that guild. Like that'll be part of all of the guild initiatives as places open up, and yada yada yada. So like there's a lot of forward thinking that we're doing to try and make sure that people stay moving and don't stay stagnant, and Tararis then becomes a ghost town.
Travel to the wilds to get to the other cities. Yeah, and that's a reason why the roads are going to be so important. And once people open up new areas, that there's going to be a huge effort, I imagine, in the player base to get roads done, and more importantly, sustained. Because I know you in particular, Eve, weren't here when this happened, but the East was invaded at one point, and the players witnessed one of the roads be destroyed in that area.
Yep.
We
So-
may or may not have teleportation means to get part of the way
Yeah.
or all the way.
Yeah,
I was about to say that too.
Yeah.
That's definitely on the table. It's just another one of those collective effort goals that you guys are going to have to work towards to establish is like stable magic portals between locations.
as well as outpost bastions and strongholds that will operate as little mini cities here and there, depending on where you're at, that will provide certain things too if you need to stay there or to do quests there, etc.
Whew.
And there's also one more thing that isn't used as much as part of the gathering stuff, because gathering has been quite successful, but the only one that hasn't been used as much is hunting. But we do have something planned for the near future that would likely change that.
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
for you chefs out there,
Ah,
if you're interested in cooking at all, like the best way to ensure that you're gonna get the cooking components that you want, since they're tied to specific monsters for the dishes, is hunting, because it allows you to.
I didn't
Try
even
it.
mean that, but yeah, that's as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But don't go hunting
And or
alone. It
fishing.
can be
Summer.
dangerous.
Summer fishing. Yeah, it can be dangerous. Right?
oh, and I suppose I guess this should have been on the long shot thing, because we are thinking about it. Is water based content.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like nautical.
I don't know. I don't think that's on long shot, to be on with you. We already have that region, right? It's just like the slums. That's more of getting in with quests and stuff.
Oh, I meant
Yeah.
mechanically with what we have planned in the future. I guess we could just release.
Oh
it.
no, the real ship stuff, yeah. The real ship stuff, you're right. It's long. But we've actually got a plan. I don't know if we've mentioned it to you guys before, but you guys will have water encounters this year, 25 for sure.
Coastal, and that'll probably come into play even more as we do the expanded wilds areas, because you'll be able to traverse, if you're heading west, you go south and you'll eventually hit a coastline. Like stuff like that. So okay, I see Zane typing. There might be another follow-up question.
Any plans to maintain increase the number of players who join the server and remain active? I've noticed several players feel intimidated by the server size. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the OOC stuff, like the OOC event stuff, will I think help with that. If we're talking about player retention in just kind of any vague case, there's not really much we can do about people who enter and feel intimidated, other than be welcoming and be willing to teach people how to do, which you all do already. Even when we're not there, you're in questions telling people how the server works and such. So like, I think
Well,
one of the thing we get.
I don't know. I think we can help a little bit, right? Like, so we've got plans for the dynamic NPC behavior to engage them, and the entry quest. The starter quest will be a part of quests to help people navigate them through certain systems and mechanics that all new characters will have to do for at least their first approved one, right?
Yes.
Um,
That's the first
which should
question.
help
You get the quest system.
introduce them to how some of the things work. I definitely agree with Fantasta's points, and I didn't mean to cut you off in that way. That like we do try to be warm and welcoming and document information for everyone in the pins and things like that. But we are trying to find ways to maintain engagement and do have things planned. Those are the two I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, my main thing is that I think that there's nothing more sociable we can do in that aspect. Obviously, we're going to continue to make things as mechanically presentable as possible. The tutorial type command that Whack is talking about is an effort to do that. I just didn't know we were talking about that, but that'll be a huge thing, which is basically when you start the server, your character goes through this little tutorial, which after you make your first character might or might not be optional. Obviously, it
No,
depends.
you will definitely be able to opt out of it after you've made your first character, but the first character will be required.
I more meant like quote unquote second character, like if you leave and come back, like whatever. But like,
I mean, there's no way to control for that one. If the bot doesn't have you on record because you left, then it doesn't have you on record because you left. Like that's just
yeah. So there'll be
Oh,
stuff like that.
and player progression. That's another way to help identify. So one of the things that hasn't changed with the names, because it's just a carryover, we haven't been able to update it, and is coming through with this next update with some of these balance fixes and error fixes, this patch, so to speak, that we're going to be putting through in the next couple of weeks here when Kravik and I can get the time. it's going to have the player progression that's going to outline how much player experience you have within Angramore. And that's going to allow you access to other features like we do with the art and things like that now. Certain application types, character slots available, etc.
Yep.
So hopefully it won't be as overwhelming right away, and it'll be easy to identify experienced players.
But
Yep.
for you all here right now, there's an early announcement for the newest event coming up, and I'll let Virgil take that.
Yes, so we have an event coming up soon, probably within the next, correct me if I'm wrong here, Coders, week or so. I'd say within probably a week. That we're gonna launch is our winter event. Our mid-year event took a little bit longer to complete, so it kind of butted into when we normally start the end of the year event. But we wanted to keep it so, and some of you got a tease of that who were on the finale quest for this last event, that the Serenus tribe is now in Ingramore. They come through every year. They're a tribe of storm giants, and they have their own celebration for the end of year that they do, which will be introduced to you all as new players for sure. And then some of the old players might recognize them a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna have a whole winter event coming up here soon, so be on the lookout for that. There will be, a combination of, user benefits, like individual player benefits, as well as a collective effort benefit that will affect the entire server, and of course, we'll have DM run content interlaced inside of the event schedule. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. That'll be coming up soon. So. And then the last thing, in terms of notifications, is as we do for a lot of the newbies, as we do after after we do our Q&As, these quarterly updates, we'll be sending out a questionnaire survey, just getting a read on how people are feeling about the server, different features, any sort of ideas, just a way of collecting feedback, seeing where we sit on certain things with everybody. It'll be completely anonymous. There'll be a link to it in the announcements channel later today or tomorrow, early tomorrow. So, but yeah, any other questions before we call it?
Get rid of the wind weather. No.
We are making some tweaks to weather in terms of making sure that like high winds are actually high winds and all of that. Like we're looking at all of those things just to make sure that they're, sometimes what is realistic doesn't make sense in game mechanics, and so we always have to do that balance and tweak accordingly. So
If you want it gone forever, you're gonna have to make a weather machine.
or I would even allow for the spell control weather to do that.
Correct.
Like you want to
Can
cast
the
control
storm
weather,
sorcerer do that then? Yeah,
Can you cast control weather?
I can control winds with that. It is a feature that's probably never going to get used, but it's a feature for the class.
Well, there he
Yeah,
said it.
if
It's
you
never gonna
control
get
winds,
used.
then I don't see why if you can use that feature, like I would argue that you could negate that. You just got to use the
Well,
feature.
the strong wind rules written just says if there's strong wind, then you're disadvantaged. But the feature says you can change the direction of the wind.
Yeah, but
But-
hey,
You can make it work
don't
for
be
you.
that vague. Don't be that vague. Within how many distance? What's the distance?
No, it's the area. I think to the distance is not a problem. It's just the fact that the direction change doesn't mean anything raw. So it doesn't mean if you're shooting against the wind or with the wind.
Yeah, that would be very complicated. I'd have to take a look at the full text on that feature before we decide whether or not that one can negate it. But control weather for sure could.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have to look at that feature text wise. We can talk about that. That one's a little bit trickier if it's just changing direction.
But yeah, obviously, if there's any suggestions that y'all think about regarding anything that comes up here, make sure to go to the request channel and just jot down your idea if you have a specific idea.
Yeah, or if you prefer to put that in the questionnaire, there is a section in the questionnaire that
That's also good.
is open ended. So either or. But yeah, as always, like I mean, I think I mentioned it at the start of this is like 2024 was a pretty big year in terms of progress for us. Like we got a number of big pieces and building block pieces for other big pieces done, and we're kind of just refining and tweaking some of those as we finish up the other big pieces to making this place work the way that we want it. So, you know, barring any major unforeseen circumstances in the Vanguard team specifically, like I anticipate 2025 to be, at least from your all standpoint, a even bigger year in terms of developments and features and things that you guys are going to be interfacing with. But yeah, if there's, I'm gonna leave the floor open a little bit longer for questions that only we can answer. And then if there are nothing else, then if there's nothing else, then I'd say we call it. We give you guys your weekend.
Lots of
We
server
can-
suggestions coming up. Okay, I want to be very clear. Please don't spam the requests, but you know,
Yeah, like I said,
trickle
there
them
will be
in over time
so
so we have
we'll-
time to discuss. Like,
Yeah. And I would definitely say like
Did we not discuss that I'm the head moderator? No? Okay.
no.
But yeah, and all as always, like as you guys meet the requirements, one thing that I know we've ever since we made the change, we've been talking about semi frequently in Gen Chat is just like, you know, we've got a decent amount of hands on deck right now for the community organizers. I feel like, I mean, Fantessa is going to be able to answer that a little bit better in terms of demand right now. We definitely need some more mods. I could probably use one or two more writers if people feel like they're good writers or they want to be involved in all that, which all of those roles generally, but especially the writing role, be prepared to read a bunch of lore and not be able to talk about it with anybody other than other people that are in the staff, because there's a lot that you all don't know yet.
There is no Warren Bossing say if you are a lawyer.
So, but yeah, definitely the mod team.
What benefits does a mod get? None. You get to interact with Whackmore.
I mean, you do get knowledge. You definitely get knowledge ahead of time. I get a bit more of a direct line to the Vanguard in particular, but other staff, um, you know, it's more of a hey, we wanna help out. Like I think the staff. Correct me if I'm wrong here, coders, because I always get this wrong. Does the staff get like a XP boost for being staff? Am I wrong?
Oh yeah.
The staff role does not XP boost currently.
Okay. But we have explored certain staff benefits. We're just trying to figure out which ones would actually be valuable to you all, outside of just like stuff like that, XP boosts.
We in no way want anyone to join because of those benefits, though. They're just a nice.
Oh God, no.
They're
The
just
minute,
nice to have.
I can speak for my team. The minute I get the whiff that you're trying to join my team because you want the boosts, nah, you're out.
Same, except there will be a lot more cursing.
Tragic. Less time to play. That's me.
Yeah, you get less time to play. There you go.
That's the biggest bonus.
I mean, you get a lot of insight not only into what they're doing, but the ability to voice your opinion.
A bit more directly.
That
Yeah.
a little more directly. You know, plus we're always looking at ways to improve and stuff, and we're not going to do that talking to the same four people over and over again, right? So like if you want to build this place, then I'm sure there's a role you could chip in and do it, you know.
Yeah, and I think the best way to like actually like communicate to everyone like what being staff is all about is that like we don't always agree. Trust me, you'll realize that if you become staff. But what we do agree on is that every other Westmart server has its problems, and we aim to get rid of all of them.
or as many of them as humanly possible.
Yeah, as many of them as humanly possible.
And as long as like, and that's one of the core requirements. I think that for sure we as the Vanguard share, but we definitely look for. I know I'm more keenly focused on it in terms of selecting other staff members to join us. Is like it's my my personal philosophy has always been like I care about the solution. I don't care about whose idea it was. like as long as this gets us to better or the best version of what we can do, cool. But it's more about like trying to have that holistic view of the server of like, I as a player, there's tons of things, and like we go over this all the time. There's tons of things in our deliberations where like I as a player would prefer to have this feature work this way. But it's not it's good for me, it's not good for the overall health of the server. And so like we kind of have to constantly be on each other in that regard to make sure that like, hey, is this just the thing that you want, or is this the thing that's actually going to be good for the server? And so like that usually is the thing that we agree on, that like that's the core philosophy there, is good for the server, not necessarily like just because it would make your time better, or it's a preference thing. So
Yeah, as long as you have that perspective and can kind of disconnect from any individual problem you have that hasn't got to do with the server's benefit, like you'll do fine.
but yeah. Last call for questions, comments, whatnot.
This is the third last call for question.
And obviously you can give feedback and recommend, and so any sort of suggestions either in the the questionnaire that will be sent out soon, or in using the request channel forms. So either or. We do read those, and a lot of times it seems like we don't because, and I guess we should just make a more concerted effort to respond in this way when that does arise. Of like the rumor mill one was just like the minute it came through, we were all like, "Yep, already on the list." We just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
But it is. I will say it is encouraging to see that, like, I actually consider it a vote towards us in terms of how we're thinking about this place. That, like, I would say probably about 80% of the time, stuff that comes through in the request channel from you all are things that it's either a version of or a direct, like, the exact same carbon copy of an idea that we've already been floating for a few months, and we're just figuring out how to implement.
Yeah.
So like that bodes well in my head that generally speaking we're on the same page. It's just things take time to develop.
But yeah, unless anyone has any questions about like the upcoming event or anything like that, which I mean we won't answer, but like, if you have the question, like then I think that's the end of this meeting.
Yeah. As always, thank you guys for spending your time here, playing the game, giving your feedback. This is what year is this, Whack?
Okay,
Since you and I started?
he's lost his marbles.
I mean, we're going on 4.
Yeah, we're going into year 4. That's what I thought. Of like working on this place, developing this place, like trying to really like make it in the vision that Whack and I started with when it was more just me and him. And yeah, like we really appreciate you guys being here. We really appreciate your feedback and you enjoying the world. So keep doing that. Keep sharing it with people. In terms of being able to help out the health of the server, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is tell people about it, share it, and engage, and then just be honest about what you're seeing with the game, and as a courtesy to us, because we're a small group of volunteers trying to do a lot, just patience and a little bit of grace with us. It's gonna, like, these are big things, and we have 2 coders, so
And we have
things
to
take
deal
time.
with Wizards of the Coast rulings.
Yes, and all of the changes they keep making that oftentimes
You know
don't
what?
make
I
sense.
think it's probably a good idea to voice this as a as an example just this morning we had a whole conversation about a tiny interaction between a spell and a action in the game, and I hate Wizards of the Coast.
Yep, and that is not uncommon with us. That's probably like a once a week thing.
Once a week.
But yeah.
But yeah, other than that, unless any of you want to follow up after this, thank you all for coming here. As Virgil said, I will probably follow up on more OOC stuff if you want to interact with your fellow players more over the coming year. And I'm sure if you want to join Virgil to help make the lore more verbose and
Fleshed out is the word
fleshed
that I would use.
fleshed out, I suppose. But also higher in quality in terms of its expanse. Or if you just want to help out by like telling people how the rules work and like how D&D 5e works when they come in here being like, hey, I'm new, then join Wax Team.
All right then. Well, have a good weekend, y'all. We'll see you around as we tend to do. And be on the lookout for the new event and the questionnaire and some stuff in the announcements.
Yep. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.